talked a little bit, and these are oftentimes quickies. The 10th Amendment, y'all remember? 10th Amendment basically says that, okay, the powers in the Constitution that are given to the federal government are the federal government, and the powers that are not are basically left to the states. So effectively, the 10th Amendment is the amendment that gives the state governments the most power. So kind of keep that thought in mind. We've already talked about extradition. We've already talked about commerce. Article 6, we talked about McCulloch. Article 6 is the one that deals with the Supremacy Clause. And if you remember, the Supremacy Clause says that if, in fact, the state actions disagree with the Constitution wins. It is the supreme law of the land. So kind of keep that one in mind. We talked about these two different kinds of federalism, and if you remember, dual federalism is kind of like layer cake federalism. And the idea with a layer cake, and you know, maybe you've baked a cake or eaten cake, you know, there are usually a couple or three different levels of cake that are in there. And they're delineated oftentimes by frosting, right? So you might have one layer of cake that's chocolate, and one piece that's, you know, the middle piece is maybe vanilla, and maybe the top piece is banana or caramel or something like that. For our purposes, the basic idea on this is dual federalism says that you're going to be able to specifically tell the different functions of state and local and federal government because there are going to be clear divides in their power. So if there is one layer that's chocolate and that's the local level, well, you know, the local chocolate is not necessarily supposed to go into the vanilla or the caramel. And the same thing, if the the chocolate is, if the caramel is the state level, it cannot take federal power. And the trick on it is because these three layers are clearly delineated with frosting and whatnot, you know whose power is what and whose power isn't. Cooperative federalism is where it begins to bleed. So you can't necessarily tell oftentimes where state power ends and federal power begins. So think about it like this. The federal government and the state government can both tax. That would be an interesting place where you wanted to try and figure out differences or the delineation between state and federal power. And laboratories of democracy, I think I had mentioned this to y'all. The states are considered laboratories of democracy, if you remember. Why? Because they can experiment on different policies. And I think I had mentioned to you that Wyoming was the first state that gave women the right to vote. Georgia was the first state that gave 18-year-olds the right to vote. Nevada legalized prostitution. Well, women getting the right to vote became a constitutional amendment. 18-year-olds became a constitutional amendment. Prostitution has not become a constitutional amendment. In other words, you have the degree of being able to experiment with different policies. If it works, it can expand nationally. If it works for you but not for others, you don't impose it on them. It's basically what we're talking about. I know we've talked about NIMBY, not in my backyard, and I think I had mentioned to y'all that idea of the city manager being a good example of the NIMBY article, because effectively Largo folks were pretty upset, or at least enough of them were upset to get that sex change, the guy that was getting the sex change operation ultimately removed from being city manager. So kind of keep that in mind. And some of these articles that we've talked about, I think without very much imagination, you could make an argument for NIMBY. So just because we didn't necessarily talk about it there, it doesn't mean that if you make a good argument that in fact another article wouldn't apply there. So kind of keep that thought in mind. As we deal into chapter 3, and I'll be fairly quick on these because I know we're probably coming up on time, but just looking at the articles right quick, and the articles, this is the chapter that I've got to add a couple, so bear with me with that. Legislative prayer, Gary, I believe that was the article that you had, and I think that this was the one in Greece, New York. Y'all remember this? And do y'all remember they would always have a prayer prior to a local meeting in Greece, New York? Do you remember what the ruling was?
Yeah, it couldn't contain three things.
Three things.
Damnation. Putting other religions down.
I
don't remember the
Or
word.
conversion.
Yeah. Make sure that you're comfortable on those, because those three pieces are kind of important. And remember, the Supreme Court said that this was legal, and I think the article even mentioned in there that there were a number of Roman Catholics on the court, and all of them were in favor of this. Gary, was it 5-4 or was it 6-3?
I thought it was 5-4.
I was thinking it was 5-4 too.
I think 4 of the 5, it was like 4 of the 5 that voted were the
We're the Roman Catholics. Yeah, that's right. That's right. The pill article. I believe Nadia had the pill article. Do y'all remember that one from Maine?
Yeah.
The pill article was the one where the high school, I'm sorry, not the high school actually, but schools, yeah, they were actually able to have a clinic. And in fact, in this clinic, you know, there was some fine print on there. The parents would have to sign effectively to give their child permission to go. But when they did go, parents would not necessarily get the specifics as far as why the kids would go. And do y'all remember some of the things that they could do when they went to this clinic at this main school?
They could give them the pill. They
Good.
could.
Dental work, right?
I think it did say something about
Yep,
dental work.
dental work, I think therapy as well, and general
Substance
checkups.
abuse issues.
And they
mental health.
weren't going to have to ultimately, tell the parents. It says up here, much like the physician's office been offering condoms and testing for pregnancy and STDs, dental, mental health, and basic care. And this is from Portland, Maine. So you would sign that your child could go. However, if you didn't read the fine print, you wouldn't know that nobody would have to tell you what ultimately your son, your daughter, whomever would be getting from the school. And I remember I asked several of y'all what you would want to know about your daughter if in fact, you know, your daughter went. And I believe many of y'all said, I would want to know if she was going and hearing about things like this. And I think somebody laughed when I said I might have been the public school person that would have been helping. No, I don't think I quite said that. But you get the idea. We didn't talk about this other one, but kind of think about that, baby. Think it over. That's kind of funny. I hate we didn't get to that one. We talked about preambles and we talked about Senate things. The preambles were some of the different examples that I had given you, the supreme ruler of the universe and stuff like this. Take a look at those. I don't know that I'm necessarily going to go into detail on these, but it might be safe for some multiple choices. I'll add the Senate things, you know, as far as the 2 or 4 year term limits, or 2 or 4 year terms, I should say. And this was something that we had just talked about, I think it was like last Thursday, in fact. And then workers' comp. Y'all remember that one?
Yeah.
The Glass Pro shop and the husband and the wife and all the prison terms and whether or not you have to get workers' comp if in fact your boss's wife thinks you're having an extramarital affair and hits you with a bat and you get injured in a high-speed car chase off of work grounds. Yeah, you gotta love it. I mean, North Carolina is an awful place. But with that being said, I like it. It's my place, but it's an awful place. Workers' comp on this. Remember, in order to gain workers' comp, it needed to be work-related and not personal-related. And in this case, North Carolina was basically saying, hey, this is really more personal-related. So kind of keep that thought in mind. Now, the articles that we did last Thursday, do y'all, the guy that was masturbating in public nudity on the metro, that's one that I haven't posted yet, but I'll go ahead and get that one in. What was the article that Nadia had last week? It's escaping me right now. It was something that I think upset her Chilean sensibilities. John's like, Chilean sensibilities?
The school computers.
The school computers, the school monitoring, yes, the school that actually turned on the computers and they were monitoring folk. And I remember that a number of y'all got really angry about that one in Philadelphia. And I think the funny part about that is they won a big judgment, but the vast bulk of it went to the attorneys anyways. And I'm not looking at Gary for any particular reason. So I'll make sure that those are in there. I'll put the Confederate statue article in there. I might add a couple of terms, and I'm going to look this over tonight before I go. Y'all are going to be the 6th exam out of 6 that I write. So I'm going to sit down, and I'll probably be writing it tomorrow, hopefully during the snow day, right? And we'll see how that goes. But do y'all have any questions about anything?
If we do, can we email you?
Yeah, you can email. I will do my best. Like I said, I'm going to go sit down now, and I'm going to bang out the discussion board. I'm going to try and write an exam. And I'm going to get ready just in case that we have canceled classes tomorrow. But I just heard today's supposed to be 1 to 3 inches, and it's been going up. I heard 0.2 to 1 inch at first, and now it's supposed to be up to 3 inches. And it was spitting snow when I was driving over here today. So for what it's worth, it's cooling off. But anybody with any questions? Maximilian, you good as good can be? Joel, good? Yeah?
So could you repeat the three requirements for the legislative prayer?
Legislative prayer, y'all remember these. Not damnation, right? Not conversion, right? And you had the third one, Dustin.
It's not,
Can't put down
other religions.
Yeah.
Like,
Not
can't
putting
put-
down other religions, yeah. And it says it in there, I think there's 2 articles on that page, and one article kind of tells the story, and then the other article kind of tells the result. And that one could set up as a multiple choice question, or it could set up as a short answer.
What chapter is that?
That was from chapter 3. Yeah. Anybody with anything else? All right, good luck, y'all.